Coming to you from a portable microphone, this is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am sitting high above Atlantic Station looking out at downtown Atlanta, and they're just a completely badass corner. Oh, you know what? Make sure, Jason, that we get a picture before we quit. I always forget to take pictures of the guests. So we're sitting up here in a little conference room at Ogilvy in Atlanta. I started my career at Ogilvy, New York. My lovely wife, Lisa, actually worked in this office years ago. It's a pleasure to reconnect with Jason, who is got one of these people. It's interesting to me how familiar Jason felt to me the first time I met him at a Creative Circus Advisory Board meeting. There's something about our having grown up in the same community, I think in Atlanta, that there's a familiarity, almost a family-style familiarity about Jason. And I never discussed that with him. He's just sitting here looking at me, he's kind of nodding. I don't know if he feels the same way. But there's something about having started at the same go point and then ending up in different points that I think is a really fascinating sliding doors sort of thing. I've often thought about what would happen if you had a long-lost identical twin. I'm not saying that you're my twin brother or anything. And if they had taken made different decisions or done things differently, how would it have ended up? But Jason is, as you know, he's executive creative director at Ogilvy. It's no longer called Ogilvy Atlanta. It's just Ogilvy, part of the big network. He actually started off at Portfolio Center after graduating from University of Florida. I'm curious why he went to Portfolio Center instead of the Creative Circus. That may be a question we can talk about.
Do you hold that against me?
A little bit. No, I don't actually.
Right.
I also graduated from Portfolio Center, but that was PC. That was pre-circus. There was no circus. So you had a choice.
I went to circus. I went looking to try to get into circus, and they told me to go away.
All right. I don't like those people. That wasn't me. That was before I was there. Seriously?
I did. It was busy. I mean, I think you guys were stealing all the students from PC, and I went. I had heard about circus. I sat in on a class, and they had me do a couple of sketches of ads. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. And they said there's no room this quarter. And I went over to PC, and they said, "Oh, we got room." And I went to PC.
We don't do that anymore. Was that the situation where they said there's no room if you can find an art director you can come? Did they say that? Because I don't think I
had that offer.
Because I think there was a time when they
said no.
They said no? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if see, my philosophy on it is I don't think we should say no. I think we should say yes and then say prove it. I don't think it should be hard to get in. I think it should be hard to stay in and succeed. So whatever. Sorry we missed you.
No hard feelings, by the way.
No, I have no hard feelings. Was that creepy, that thing about the familiarity?
No. Not at all.
Okay.
I think we've had this conversation actually. I believe that we have been in a car before while you were driving and got lost with your sister.
Oh, in carpool or something?
Way long ago.
I think I'm much too old. I'm much older than you for that to have happened. I think I'm like 8 years old.
I think I just remember Laura's stepbrother driving us around getting us lost, and that is a memory in my head at some point in my life. It could be you. I don't know.
I'm going to say that's likely.
Yeah, very well.
All right, so right out of college, similar to my experience, a production assistant at New Line Cinema in Hollywood out in L.A., and then found advertising. I'm assuming this is what happened. You found advertising, became a copywriter at Fitzgerald & Company here in Atlanta, working for my dear friend Eddie Snyder, working with Eddie, I should say. Then an ACD at Darcy in Hong Kong. I'm very curious about this move from Atlanta to Hong Kong. And then spent some time, I'm not going to go through all of these, spent some time in Hong Kong, Singapore, and then you were there for a good 11 years.
12 years, yeah.
Wow, 12 years before coming back in 2013 to work at Ogilvy here in Atlanta. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Welcome to the microphone.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
What's the impetus to get somebody to say, okay, everything's working out at Fitzgerald & Company, I think I'm going to take a jump and go work at Darcy in Hong Kong. How did that come about? And was there trepidation? Was there excitement? Why would you have done something like that?
Yeah, I think at times in my life I've been impatient. I think it's probably a good thing in the world of advertising. Yeah. I had graduated from Portfolio Center, or not. I take it back. I didn't graduate from Portfolio Center. I got impatient there.
Yep.
I spent a year at Portfolio Center. I felt like I got the gist of it, and was ready to go. I was a little bit older. I had spent a couple of years working in Hollywood and bouncing around at a couple of different
How old
things.
were you when you started ad school?
I guess I was 25, 6, something like that.
I was 26 when I started.
So there were some kids there that were young, coming straight out of high school. There were some kids that were straight out of college, and I just felt like I've been there, and I wasn't in that mode anymore. I was ready to go make some money and start my career and start a life. So I was anxious and spent a year. Felt like I could maybe spin that into something. Got a job at Fitzgerald and Company as a freelancer. Which was kind of serendipitous. Someone left one day and they called me and said, "Hey, can you come in?" And I was actually working on the Atlanta Hawks, and I'm a big sports kind of guy.
Did Eddie know you there? Is that how you got in?
It was Jim Paddock who had brought me in.
Okay.
But I worked very closely with Eddie as well. And it happened to be the year of the strike. I guess it was 98, and there was an NBA strike. And so every week that the strike continued, I would continue to be doing work, getting ready for when they were ready to go, and it changed every week because it was like, okay, now the fans are pissed. We got to change the brief a little bit, and so I just sat there and continued to essentially making spec work for a product that never was going to transpire.
Right.
But I got I got some roots in the office, and all of a sudden I would get other briefs, and I became ultimately a full-time employee there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So
that gets us to Fitzgerald. And then I spent a couple of years at Fitzgerald. I realized it was a top-heavy organization. There were a lot of senior people above me, and I realized that there was no path for someone like me. There were people that had been there for a long time and were very qualified, and they weren't looking for a kid to come in and shake things up. I mean, I'm from Atlanta. I loved being here, but I realized that as a career trajectory, if I was going to succeed the way I wanted to, it wasn't going to be a linear. It wasn't going to happen in that one agency. So I was going to have to bounce, and I knew that was the time to go to New York. So I went to New York. I got there at the beginning of 2001. I'd gotten some TV on my reel in Fitzgerald, and it was good. It's something I'm still proud to have done. And I felt like, I got some TV. I'm going up to New York. I'm going to go get a job. Easy. And, I think being kind of naive helped me because I just quit my job and went up to New York, not knowing, one, that the dot-com bubble had burst. And so right when I got there, people started getting laid off.
This is what year?
2001, beginning of 2001.
Yeah, that's a terrible year, horrible year.
Horrible. So all of a sudden I got there and was trying to freelance, and all of a sudden these freelance gigs started drying up. And I remember getting offered a job at Y&R, and I said no. I thought I can do better than this. And like the next week they laid off like 10% of their staff. And I remember calling back and being like, "Is that still available?" And they're like, "Are you kidding me?"
Right. Oh my God. That's the year that Lisa and I will tell you that every single person we knew at our level, we were ACD level that year, everyone had been laid off. Everyone. That entire level of fat had been cut out of every agency. Everybody was looking for work.
Yeah, so I was in New York, and I went to a headhunter that I had been using, and I said I'd go overseas, and I thought that meant London. I thought when I said I'll go overseas, that meant London. And she said, okay. And the next day someone came through town and she said, this guy wants to meet you. And he met with me for 20 minutes and he said, why don't you move to Hong Kong?
Yeah. So what did you think of that movie?
And I thought it was this Aussie guy named Mark Lucas.
I know Mark very well.
Yeah, so Mark's up in New York now. And I didn't know what to do. I'd actually got like some half-baked offer to go to Vegas and work I don't even remember the agency in Vegas. It was some
R&R.
It might have been R&R. I can't remember. I had a couple friends from PC that had gotten jobs there, and they're like, "Come out here." It was essentially like, "You can live on my couch for a while." And I thought, you know what, Vegas might kill me. I know enough about myself. Little I didn't know anything about Hong Kong, and I was like, "Oh, let's go to Hong Kong for a year and see what happens." Like that'll be a good life experience. I've never been afraid to go try new things, but that was a pretty radical.
What was
departure.
the work? What was the sort of how did your job change? Like, what was it? Was it different? The sort of the way you approach assignments, the types of clients that they had there? Was the work different? Did it feel a bit foreign to you, no pun intended?
Yeah, so the biggest difference was that you realize getting there quickly, I was working a regional role. I can't speak Cantonese, so I wasn't going to write for the local Hong Kong market, but it was for pan-regional work. So the first thing I realized is that you can't use language. I was, at the time, a kind of comedy writer, a lot of dialogue. And I realized that's not going to work. I'm going to have to rely on images.
Yep.
I'm going to have to rely on music. I'm going to have to rely on some really universal themes that everyone can understand.
Was it frustrating? Because I would have found that to be sort of like muting a little bit my natural talent.
I felt like it was really valuable because it was flexing a new muscle. It was learning a new skill and realizing that oftentimes that's a really strong approach to take. And I think you see it all the time. Big kind of global themes. That's why all the superhero movies work so well globally. At the box office because everyone understands.
That had to be great training for big global brands that you ended up working on here.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, so it's something that I appreciate that what I got from that. I appreciate that. And the funny thing is, the first job I got was a Philips light bulb job. It was called Ecotone. It was this light bulb that lasted a longer time. It was going from incandescents to CFLs, and this was like the first approach in 2001. And that went on to win gold at one show.
I think I remember that work.
Yeah, it was a dominoes. There's a bunch of dominoes lined up. A guy's in the room, and he videotapes it, and he pushes the dominoes, and they start going down, and all of a sudden the light flickers out, and it says, the longer lasting light bulb you can trust.
That's so great.
And so that was, I'd gone from not being able to get a job in New York, flying out to Hong Kong, first job I do. I'm in a foreign country and I'm working for this kind of pan-regional job.
Were you ever like, what the hell did I do?
Well, it was right out of the gates. I won at one show. It was like It was just like success, instant success. So it was this.
So you're working with Mark?
I was working for Mark. Mark was the ECD of the office, and I was I think at the time an ACD. But so cool. we got along. I mean, Mark wanted to do great work, and that was we had that in common. It was like, yes, who was willing to move to Hong Kong at the time to go and had kind of common sensibilities.
Mark has always had his eye on wanting to win awards, and I think in a way that's not like
healthy. Is that what you're going to say?
I was going to say not douchey, because I've known people that it was clearly not healthy. Like it was completely single focus. I don't know if it's his single focus. I think he's a guy who's a great student of the business and loves the industry.
I think Mark had learned from Neil French, and I think the award system. I can go into a million. If you want to go into that world,
the shows the podcast is called "Don't Get Me Started."
Yeah, I can get started on that.
And I don't want to talk about the fact that we don't go and sit down across the table from a client who has business problems and think what are we going to do to get ourselves a pencil? Like that's fucking bullshit.
Well, here's the thing: it's external validation that's unnecessary if you believe in what you're doing, right?
Right. Do the lawn care companies that you hire get awards for that shit? Like, no, you want your yard to look good. That's what you're paying for. These people want their products to move and their brands to grow. That's what they want.
I think people who are confident, people who know what they're doing, don't give a shit about awards. I think that it's for insecurity, right? When you don't know it's external validation, it helps you feel good about yourself. I think that some clients will feel that way because they don't understand how to judge work. So they look at this, symbol as saying, well, that's good. It's been awarded.
Well, what about you judging portfolios? How important are awards in portfolios?
Not at all. I don't care. I mean, when I look at portfolios, I'm not even looking at the work usually. I'm looking at the extracurricular activities. Right. I'm always interested in, are they a musician? Are they an artist? Are they a writer? What are they doing? What's their social presence? What are they doing? My big thing now is like, I love guys who have a side hustle that are figuring out how to sell something online, somehow build up a community, tap into that world, figure out how to push out through Facebook and Instagram and sell things, because ultimately that's what our clients need to do. And if you're doing it on a personal level, well then, man, you know these tricks and trips. You're speaking the language. Yeah. A lot of the creatives that I meet they're kind of passive in that world. And that's going to become a problem because we can't just do the things we used to do, which was, I'm just going to wait for the script to come in, and the brief will come in, and I'll write a script, and that will be that. Man, we got to get in the weeds.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I think that it's a matter of doing it, even if you don't think you're doing it correctly. Like I've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast, just getting out there and putting shit out there just to see what happens. And I just found out, by the way, that this podcast now I can publish to Spotify.
You won an award.
I can go on Spotify.
Have you won awards for this podcast?
I don't know, listeners. Let me know if I've won an award. Let me know if you would, listener. Let me know if you would have given this an award, because I'm more interested in like what a creative director thinks of a student book than an award show panel. You know what I mean? Anyway, okay. So how did you end up going from Hong Kong to Singapore? And I think I skipped a whole page of your bio when I did the intro. I did. I skipped a whole page here. WPP. I skipped all of this stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of jumping.
There's 3 pages here. So,
but a lot of
so when you think back on these years, right? How did it progress to you, and what were the better decisions and the idiotic decisions that you made?
Yeah. So once again, I mean, impatience plays a theme, I guess, in my career, because I went to Hong Kong. I won at one show. I was there for just over a year, and I decided I'm going to go somewhere else. But I had, the great news was, and here's where awards work really well, because it gave me the confidence and the ability to go just pick up and sight unseen move to Singapore. I had never been to Singapore, but I had seen archive for years that Singapore was doing great work. Craft, yeah. Little did I know that it was all just to win awards, and it wasn't necessarily really showing. Yeah, right. It wasn't really showing up in the ad world. So I hopped on a plane. I went to Singapore. Got a job at Leo Burnett. You needed to have a job to live there, basically. So quickly took the first job that was offered, which was at Leo Burnett, working for a woman named Linda Locke, who is Neil French's ex-wife.
Okay. Don't know her.
So there's a theme of Neil French in this. So went to work there, worked on Tiger Beer, did a regional spot for them. But I did not last long there. Linda and I didn't see eye to eye on all things, and
how often has that happened in your career?
Probably too often.
I think it happened with me, at least. It happened to me once, like profoundly, where I just was a miserable year at an agency where the creative director and I never liked the same thing once. And I think it's because I got there because a client moved and took me with them rather than him having hired me. But it's unpleasant.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about it. I once again, my patience, it runs thin. And so Linda had a style where we would write. I just felt like I was on my own. I like being on my own. I think I'm good when I'm autonomous and left to my own devices. And I'm a hustler. I'll figure it out.
Why is that? Because you have ownership and it's. Do you like? So you're a guy that performs better under pressure, probably. You need that sort of.
I don't know if
have to be relied on.
I don't love the pressure, but I think that I don't need the pressure. I think I apply my own pressure. I'm never going to just relax and chill, and I'm always going to find the next thing. I'm going to constantly. I'm curious, and I'm going to go find the next thing,
okay.
Whatever the need might be,
okay.
and even if they don't know what they need it, I'm going to go try to find a solution. So I'll tell you the story about Linda. Her style was that she wouldn't even read the emails. You'd have to write an email to her, and then her assistant would print it out on paper, and she would then make notes in red pen on your scripts, and then she would the next day place it on your desk, and you'd come in, and there would be like her handwriting was not the best, so it would be this like red scribble across the scripts, and I was just like, that wasn't my style, and I didn't like it. So I decided that I just had it. It was right before Chinese New Year one year. I guess it's 2003 maybe, and so I wrote an email to the entire company, and I said, Linda suffers from something millions of adults around the world suffer from, poor penmanship. And I found a penmanship course in America that I'm going to send her to. And I'm putting a Tiger Beer hat at the front desk. If everyone can put a little bit of their Ang Pao money, which was the kind of Chinese New Year money, then we could afford to send her there. And I wrote this whole email. And I remember right when I sent it, the guy, his name's Dick Van Motman, came over to me, and I'd worked with him at Darcy prior, and he was at Leo Burnett, and he just today got named the global CEO of Dentsu.
Wow!
So that's why this story kind of resonates with me. Yeah. And he shook my hand. He goes, "Well, it's nice working with you. Why the hell would you do that?"
Right.
And so sure enough, I sent that email off, and Linda got it. And the next day, I came in, and she had printed out in scribble, and I remember it very distinctly, my email with red scribble on it, and it said, It's one thing to take the piss out of me to my face. It's quite another to do it in such a public forum. You've really crossed the line. And so I walked into her office, and she was in there with someone. I just kind of barged in, and I held up this, paper with the red scratch, and I go, "What the fuck does this say?" And she got so fucking mad at me, and that was it. I mean, that was the end.
Oh my God, that's hilarious and awful. Oh my God, that's a great story. I don't even know where we go from there. We should just wrap up. That's so that was it? You were let go at that point?
That was it. It's funny. I think I went to the Hong Kong Sevens just after that, and it was right during SARS. And I remember coming back, and she said, "You're banned from the office because you might have SARS."
You might have SARS.
And so I said, "All right." And she just made me an offer right on the spot. She's like, "Here's the deal." And I said, "All right, done. We're done."
Oh, God. All right, so then let's talk about your move back. Let's talk about sort of what brought you back here, and you want to talk about your side hustle, this Newton Circus?
Yeah. So I mean, I left advertising in 2010. I had been running. We launched the Motorola Razr out from Beijing, and so we were running global stuff out of China. It was the first time that big brands were really doing something, big American brand doing something from Asia. And it was
What agency was this?
It was Ogilvy.
Okay.
So all those, iconic razor cut poster stuff, we were doing that. So we were doing that, and cool. I also ran Sprite globally out of Hong Kong. I realized that I just felt like I was part of the problem. I was having kids at the time, and I wasn't going to let them drink soda. And I had this crisis of conscience, and I just didn't know how to handle it. I didn't want to be part of the problem. I wanted to be part of the solution. And so I left, and I started up a thing called Newton Circus, which was an innovation company focused on social and environmental sustainability. It's still going on today. It's doing great stuff. I mean, it spun off 10 different companies.
Where is it based?
Based in Singapore.
Okay.
It's run by a guy named Daryl Arnold, who's my partner. Mm-hmm. He runs it now. He started a company called Profero, which got bought by Lowe, digital agency. He made out nicely in that. He runs the day-to-day on that, but doing some really interesting things, anything from cryptocurrencies to mobile ecosystems, helping seniors. I mean, it's just it runs the gamut, and it's really, really rewarding.
How is it funded?
It is self-sustaining now. Daryl has put quite a bit of change into it. We funded it. We bootstrapped it. Had a little bit of external investment, which we have pretty much paid back now. Mm-hmm. But it is self-sustaining, not incredibly profitable at the moment, but we're building platforms that have a lot of value to them.
That's really, really cool. And how do you balance that? And how much are you involved in that versus how much you're involved here?
I'm 100% here now. I spent 3 years full-time, day-to-day there, and then started living in the most expensive city in the world while I had 3 little kids and trying to bootstrap a startup, quickly pushed me back into the world of advertising. So, got back, worked at Bait CHI in Singapore, which was a kind of sister agency to Ogilvy. And then was moving back to the U.S. and was fortunate enough, and Kai Ming, who's my boss, kind of created, him and Miles Young created a position for me at WPP to lead the IHG account out of Atlanta globally. So
hotels,
mm-hmm. Intercontinental Hotel Group.
Yep.
So
who are based
Holiday
here.
Inn, Holiday Inn Express, Crown Plaza, Intercon.
That's what you're working on now. So what are you guys working on right now? What is your job as ECD here? What do you feel like? How has it evolved? Because we jumped around that. To listeners that aren't following this, I'm apologizing for jumping around a lot, but you look at this resume off of LinkedIn, it's like 3 pages, and there's a lot of sort of fluidity to it. How has the day-to-day sort of job task evolved, and what do you think your job is now, and what are you looking forward to?
So we run the day-to-day on Holiday Inn, Holiday Inn Express, Crown Plaza. Mm-hmm. We also do some Samsung here, Court Furnishings. There are some other accounts that bounce around, but what takes up most of my time is the hotels.
So you doing any creative?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We do. So
you,
me, yeah. I mean, I still get my hands dirty. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're pretty thin. We have basically one team on each of these brands, and I kind of look after all those teams. And we have a little bit of kind of on the periphery, some social people and some, it goes across. So we have PR, we have analytics, we have obviously account, and we have social. So, we're making lots of things here. And it's interesting. I mean, I think, gosh, media has come at us like a big wave with data and the money. All the money's going to the media. So they're highly influential now. And it's really interesting trying to balance that and try to bridge that gap. And I think that, if we can affect the media planning and buying through creative, it's going to make everything better. So I spend a lot of time talking to my media partners and trying to understand what's new and what's out there, because it's changing every day. There's some other either automated, piece of software that can help us, but also take away some of the things we used to do.
When you say media partners, what does that look like today? What do you mean media partners? So it used to be networks. Now you're talking about Facebooks and everybody?
Well, I'm more talking about the Mindshares and Starcoms of the world, the networks, but the platforms as well. I mean, we do spend a lot of time with the Facebooks and the Googles and the YouTubes and the Instagrams. They are less active in, I don't want to say the planning process, because we definitely get some good planning from the Facebooks of the world. But I feel like once you're on that platform, you kind of know you're going to be there. I think that there's opportunity when we talk to the networks to influence where we're going to go. In today's day, everyone's going to be on Facebook, but where else are we going to go? Is it going to be experiential, or is it going to be PR? Is it going to be, where are our dollars going to go?
Isn't that dictated by the problem, though? Often?
You know what? Sometimes, you're trying to squeeze out efficiencies that it becomes a formula, and it's not necessarily good or bad. It's the way it is, and you're trying to make every dollar, seen as an investment, and you want a return on that, and you do, you have to quantify it, and that's I see more and more of that.
What coming here from Asia, what was starting here at Ogilvy, let's put it this way, 3 years ago, what was the biggest surprise, either good or bad? What were you sort of like not expecting? What kind of blindsided you, either in a good way or a bad way?
SAG.
SAG?
SAG.
Paying actors?
Paying residuals on actors, and the amount of money that goes towards
SAG is
talent.
the Screen Actors Guild, and it protects actors, make sure that they're fairly paid for usage well beyond the day you shoot and the first usage, right?
Yeah.
So it's more than you thought it was going to be.
Oh yeah, I mean, so
that's the weirdest answer I could ever.
Well, because in Asia we were shooting, and as we were seeing these platforms beginning to play a lot more video, I was able to make video content, whether it went on TV or went online. It didn't really matter. It was a fluid experience. In America, you're going to pay for every use of that, and therefore, if you have 20 people in an ad, it becomes cost prohibitive to be able to run that online.
Interesting.
Or run that more on TV. Like you're seeing just huge numbers. I mean, the numbers are outrageous. So that caught me off guard, because all of a sudden you can't use 40 people in a spot because you're paying through the teeth. So you have to start thinking about it. That's where you see people going, outside the U.S. to shoot, or you're seeing people use animation more often, or you're seeing people use agencies that aren't SAG signatories, and it's a problem. And SAG, to their credit, has just released a new kind of digital waiver that they're trying to make things a little bit easier for agencies, but still it doesn't solve all the problems. There's still issues with going from TV to digital. It's complicated, and there are a lot of smart people thinking about it. But man, it's I want to use SAG actors. I want to use the best actors. I support the unions, but they need to help make it work for agencies. Really
interesting. What scares you? What do you see? Do you see that sort of agency model has changed so radically in our professional lifetime? What is it looking like going forward, and what scares you? And and flip side, what are you optimistic about?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a scary time. It's certainly a lot of disruption. in the marketplace. That is scary, but it's also filled with opportunities. I think that, whenever I talk to kids coming out of schools, I always try to say, like, agencies aren't the only companies that need creative people. All these companies need creative people now, and you're seeing more and more people forming their own internal agencies, or whether it's clients or platforms or media companies. I mean, creativity is pervasive, and it's necessary really everywhere. Mm-hmm. Being able to work with the media companies, the data analytics teams, being smarter, and it's not going to be just this siloed sheer creativity. I think it's going to be through partnerships, through collaboration, understanding the real client needs, how we're going to get there. It's a different game, but I think it's exciting.
So if you're looking at, you just hired a new junior team, what's the best way for them to endear themselves to you once they're in the house? Like, what do you really value in a?
I think being proactive. I think doing things that I'm not asking them to do. I mean, I'll get what I need from them, but when they go, when they're thinking on their own and trying to solve problems that I'm not even seeing, that's fantastic.
Right, that's really cool.
I love, I'm I'd say my door is always open if I didn't have a cubicle, but truthfully, I mean, I'm really open. I love talking to particularly the younger teams, and great ideas are great ideas. I don't care where they come from. I don't care if they come from the junior team or they come from the the PR guys or the account team, cool. and we're not too proud to take great ideas.
What is it about you? What personal trait of yours do you think has served you well so far in your career?
Curiosity, impatience. I think curiosity for sure, and I love connecting the dots. I think I'm really good at one, being curious and understanding what people do and how they do it, and then always kind of keeping that in the back of my mind and saying, oh, that could work with this, and then putting those things together and trying to create some magic.
That's a great answer, because I was wondering how you define it. That makes a lot of sense. Understanding behavior and then being able to sort of remember that to apply it is super important. I always define the curiosity as like not accepting something you don't understand, just not saying, oh, they're an idiot, or just trying to figure, wait a second, why did he say that way? And
yeah, so I think there's a couple of different kinds of curiosity. I think there's the part that doesn't accept an answer that doesn't make sense to you, and you keep poking and prodding and trying to find out why. Mm-hmm. That's a great kind of curiosity. But there's also the kind of proactive curiosity of, I wonder who that guy is, and talking to everybody. And I'm very guilty of that.
I love that.
My spot, I think you might have seen it, the Holiday Inn spot for using a guy named Scott Rigsby. He was the first double amputee to run the Ironman. Well, I met that guy on the elevator at the airport, or the escalator at the airport.
That's so cool.
And I just started talking to him because I was like, he had 2 prosthetics, and I was like, were you a veteran? And he said no, and we just got to talking.
And he was cool talking about it?
Yeah, man. I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, if he wasn't, I would have stopped. But
right.
He was, he was eager to tell me his story, and I had the length of the escalator to hear it, and I wrote down his name, and I Googled him, and I wrote a script about him, and we ended up making a whole campaign around it.
That's amazing. That's really interesting. All right, so knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time to the day you graduated as a Gator with a BS in communications from the University of Florida in Gainesville, what would you tell young Jason?
I probably should have had a little bit better plan.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I think in hindsight, I think there's some, it all works out, and it's all worked out, well. But I think, we're just kind of finding our way. I didn't have a plan to go into advertising. I thought, I'm going to go make movies, and so I went out to Hollywood and realized, oh, that's not the world for me. And my joke was always that I got into advertising for the morals.
So you're basically saying you would have wished you had planned things better, wish you had had a goal. Was it a lack of a goal or a lack of tactics to getting to a goal?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't have an end goal for sure.
Yeah,
I thought
that's the problem for me.
And I hear this about millennials all the time of they're lazy, or they don't know what they want, or they want everything handed to them. I feel like I was kind of that way coming out, and I thought it was going to be easier. I thought that I would show up and everyone would think I was so funny, and they saw the talent, and they're so lucky to have me, and that's not how it works at all. And you realize very quickly, you're humbled and realize, okay, I got to work really hard to make this happen. And so I did, and that turned the corner rather quickly. But I think people who have a little bit of a plan and a little bit more fire in their belly during the college years probably works out well for them.
One of the bad raps against millennials in the last 5 years has been the fact that they're fucking in their early 20s. Everyone in their early 20s is like that. It's like, why did they have to take the blame? That's universal. A lot of what people have problems with the quote-unquote millennials is because they're young, figuring out their lives. So whatever. Don't get me started on that. Thank you for talking.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
I really appreciate it.
We're done? That's so painful.
Do you have something to add? You have advice for today's young students and juniors, something that they should know going forward now?
Be curious. Figure it out. I mean, I think really creativity is kind of the base, but there are so many ways to go from there. I think stay open to that, because
I think you kind of said that. Like, there's more than just agency jobs. Like keep your mind open to what your first step is going to be. It's a long, circuitous route to the end.
And I think I do it also. I'm a creative, but that feels very limiting. Because you have a brain, you can talk numbers if you have to.
Right.
You can formulate a business plan if you need to. It doesn't mean that you can only come up with wacky ideas.
Absolutely.
I kind of resent the fact that we get put into that box sometimes as he can't have a business idea because he's a creative. And I think that
I find that to be worse down here in Atlanta than it was in New York.
No.
I don't know if that's a regional thing, but I do think that happens, and I think that you're 100% true thinking that like you are more than that. And it may not be that you have a business mind, but you have some other tendency. But that's great.
I think that's happening in the world of advertising. I think that we are boxed in as coming up with ads, and the world is much more fluid than that. And consultancies are coming and challenging us and able to perform the duties that we used to perform, but they're also able to perform the consultancy duties. And so, these lines are all blurred, and I think that advertising needs to get some more confidence in, hire the right people to be able to compete.
That's right. That's great. Listeners, if you want to reach Jason, he's kind enough to share his electronic mail address, jason.aspes@ogilvy.com. You can always reach me at danspodcast@mac.com. Make sure you go like this on the Facebook page so you can get free stuff. I don't get points for likes. It's just a way for you to keep up with the show.
What kind of free stuff do they get?
They get links. They're going to get links to your work. It's free of charge.
That's the free stuff? Man.
You know what? I should have
we should cut that part out.
I should start doing contests where I mail people prizes. And also, if you're up for it, go to the iTunes store and leave a review. And the show is now also, I think, going to be available on Spotify, which will hopefully be easier for some of you. Jason, thanks again so much for doing this.
You got it. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye.